Tyler, what was the Arabella Advisors network?
Oh, yes. So Arabella Advisors always told me that they were not a network. It was a for-profit. Yes, exactly. That's how I react too. It was a for-profit company that did a lot of services for various nonprofits that just so happened to essentially have been created by this for-profit entity. So, that raises all sorts of questions. But Arabella Advisors was a central hub of the left's dark money network, as I discussed in my book, The Woke-topus, The Dark Money Cabal, Manipulating the Federal Government. Many of these NGOs, so the way that it works, and you have the story up there, what exactly just happened. This was a big announcement last month where Arabella just said, we're no longer existing. We've sent some of our services, some of our contracts, our work we did to a new entity called Sunflower Services. And then there was yet a third entity that was propped up where the CEO of Arabella went there. And there are all sorts of interesting questions. Like if you look at Virginia, I went to the records in Virginia of businesses, and they said in their records that the entity formerly known as Arabella was now going by a different name, and it was the name of this new firm created by the CEO of Arabella Advisors. And so this raises questions. What we saw in the news release was saying that many of the 501c3 nonprofits, groups like New Venture Fund, which takes the lead in this, and these, by the way, are nonprofits that directed money to leftist activist groups that sent staff and policy into the Biden administration. So these are very powerful leaders on the left. They get a lot of money, and they send it into these activist groups. They prop up new activist groups for specific causes. And essentially, what critics say is these entities exist to enable donors to prop up causes without those donors being tied to the specific actions that they want to support. And so that is the dark money aspect here. Arabella ceased to exist, but the entities that, the nonprofits that are engaging in all this political activism, they very much continue to exist. So New Venture Fund still exists, and now New Venture Fund is a majority shareholder, a majority investor in this new entity, Sunflower Services. But not all of the nonprofits that worked with Arabella Advisors are with Sunflower Services. Only the ones that are 501c3 nonprofits are. The C4s, which are regulated differently by the IRS and can endorse political candidates and can tell you to go vote in a specific way, these C4 organizations are not tied to Sunflower Services. And I've been asking them where they are tied to because I think this is a very big question. Nobody has responded to me. Now, it's interesting. I reach out to New Venture Fund, and they're saying, oh, yeah, we're proud to work with Sunflower Services. I reach out to another fund, and they're like, yeah, we're proud to. I reach out to the 501c4s, crickets. And there's a real question. I think a lot of this has to do with Arabella Advisors being called out by the right, by people like Scott Walter, who had a wonderful book about Arabella Advisors. I'd like to take a little bit of credit with my book as well and Testimony on Capitol Hill, where many of us in conservative media have been calling out what the Arabella network had been doing. And now that President Trump, there's a new sheriff in town, and he's looking at the funding sources of the left, and he's specifically looking at any sort of ties between the left's dark money network and Antifa. And I think it's going to be hard for him to establish things because these guys are very smart at covering their tracks. So even if, and I don't have evidence that the left's dark money network is funding Antifa, but what I do know is that if they are, they're going to cover their tracks in every way that they possibly can. So, hats off to President Trump for wanting to investigate this, but this looks like a defensive move for this network to be separating itself into 501c3 and 501c4 sides so that it doesn't fall on the wrong side of the IRS.
Absolutely fascinating stuff. Tyler did write a great book, by the way, Woke-topus. I would highly recommend it.